Hey guys, what's up? It's Thomas. Tonight we're back here with the Green Scorpion. Tonight, well, hope you're bundled up, because we got the top 10 video game cryomancers. Basically, ice mages. I think cryo is like, cryogenics, ice. Anyway, so might as well take a look back and see who's the top freezing artist. So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy it. Let's go. Should be fun. One, go. What if Sub-Zero's gonna be on here? You think Cryomancers, you definitely think Sub-Zero, right? Here we go. Woohoo!
Ice, the element of detachment. The cruel grasp of winter has been the bane of humanity since the beginning, forcing us to build and create warmth or to be left to freeze and die. In the absence of heat, all life slows, sometimes even stopping in place. But to overcome and weaponize this element is to master a power that is really no power at all. Hello everyone, the Green Scorpion here, and you're probably confused about what the heck I just said. Though normally I keep Weapons Month, if you can call it that anymore, again, down to 5 countdowns, it just would seem incomplete without the last piece of the elemental trinity. Ice is often included with or taking the place of water in many games' element systems, but Cryomancers have always had a distinct feel to it. I think that's because
ice is frozen water, why not?
Ice can better be described as cold. Those who use ice are rarely only in control of solidified water molecules, but on the flow of the temperature itself. It's just that water is usually the first observable substance to freeze, having a remotely high freezing temperature of 32 degrees Fahrenheit, as opposed to, say, pure oxygen, which doesn't freeze until it's cooled to less than negative 200. But science schmience, what actually fascinated me with compiling this list is how many great candidates there were to choose from. And I'm not the only person to think so, I'm actually like the third person I know to do this topic. As a weapon, cold is great for mobilization or defense, able to put up barriers with ease. A solid material, ice can be sharp or blunt. It's very slippery, it absorbs as much heat as it can before melting, and it's usually not very pleasant to the touch. Often in RPGs, ice damage comes with a slowing or stopping effect, and most cryomancers are able to get a mobility advantage not by being faster but by making others less able to move. There's a reason that this is the last third of the elemental trinity. There's also a ton of possible trends that can be derived here, but rather than front load this countdown even more, I'll just hit those points as we come to them. And so, to welcome the new year, I present the finale of Weapons Month 4, the top 10 video game Cryomancers.
Begin the freeze with number 10.
I called ice the element of detachment before, as I find characters associated with ice are also largely defined by their relationship with others, or often the lack thereof. The obvious wordplay is to say that they're cold, and tend to isolate themselves, either by literally putting up barriers of ice as defensive combat, or just by isolating others. And yeah, easy pun right off the bat, so I'm just gonna get it over with. Isolate! Moving on. Putting Mitsuru Kirijo from Persona 3 at number 10 actually works out really well for me, because it's a great way to explore this concept from the get-go. Mitsuru is that seemingly perfect student I think we've all met in our upbringing. She's the student council president and the valedictorian at Gekkoukan High School. She's an expert fencer in her spare time, she's damn beautiful. And oh yeah, she found SEAS, the secret student organization that battles the forces of darkness. Her supposed character flaw is that her family is to blame for most of what SEAS has to fight against. And she feels responsible, which really isn't her flaw, but the Kirijo group's. Mitsuru has been using her persona to fight the shadows since she was a little girl, and has the Arcana of the Empress, which in the series is most associated with ice and motherhood. Interesting. Alright, now calm down, I'm not really calling her a Mary Sue. Even though she shows little signs of outward imperfection, for one thing, she's a bit of a prude. I mean, I know she's a big deal, but she won't even consider going out on a date with you unless you're acing all of your academic courses. Though she's quick to help new students, it's because she puts herself on a higher pedestal, mostly out of this feeling of guilt and responsibility to set things right. That's why she separates herself on a personal level, and why she's pushed herself to achieve so much. She's perfect because she thinks she has to be. But what does that have to do with the motherhood thing? Glad you asked. Mitsuru is
Persona.
able to summon her persona,
Oh, yeah,
Penthaslia, at will, sometimes just for a moment to cast powerful ice spells.
Oh, yeah,
So why
wasn't
not
she
just
the
put Penthaslia
navigator
on the
before
list then?
Yuki?
Well, a persona is literally just the manifestation of a person's best qualities, so those powers exist because of Mitsuru. As a side note, in Greek mythology, Penthaslia was the founder and, in essence, mother of all the Amazons. Partway through Persona 3, Mitsuru experiences a terrible loss and is out of sorts for a while, but with some support from Yukari and other friends, Mitsuru's character arc comes full circle and she realizes her role in the party. She is the matriarch of the group, more experienced than the rest, and like a good parent, it is their duty to guide the others. Cold isn't just about detachment, it can easily be subverted into attachment. Freezing water just makes molecules stick together more, right? It just means that Mitsuru is able to bear her own troubles and be the bigger person, not weighing down her Den family with them, but instead leading everyone to victory. Her persona at this point evolves into Artemisia, named for the badass Persian warrior queen. See, I told you this would all relate together. Mitsuru's jack-of-all-trades style keeps her at number 10 for me, but that doesn't mean that she should be discredited as a cryomancer, especially when you consider Persona 4 Arena. Here, the class president sports a mean fencing style, summoning Artemisia to throw in freezing spells as often as possible. While her normal attacks are a little too weak to recommend a purely offensive style, she can use her glacial spells at surprising range, allowing her to play defensively until her opponent makes a mistake, then capitalizing with a hard-hitting combo. From anti-air ice shields to freezing shards and giant icebergs, Mitsuru can knock you out cold and still have time to study for pre-calc.
Gotcha. Number 9, coming up.
Okay, last time with this. Number 9 goes to Organization 13's Vexen, ranked number 4 and titled the Chilly Academic.
I mean, it's in the name.
Seriously? The Chilly Academic? Well, anyway, Vexen is many things. He's a nobody, he's a cryomancer, he's a scientist, and he's a bleeding tank. Vexen serves as the chief scientific mind of the organization and is sent to Castle Oblivion to complete his research on creating replicas. He's loyal to Xemnas, but only because he doesn't seem to care who's in charge as long as his work isn't interrupted. Once Marluxia has some blackmail on him, he easily switches alignment. You can't say that his work isn't fruitful, being responsible for the Riku replica and Shion, but out of these 13 recluses, he's easily the most reclusive.
Aloof?
Contrast that with Axel, constantly shaking things up in the name of friendship, too much of a wildcard by Vexen standards. Fire and ice right there. As you can guess from the shield, Vexen is as holed up in battle as he is socially. I was really amused researching this. I've been looking up videos of people fighting the data battles on Proud Mode as exhibitions, and it's funny to see the same player taking 8 minutes to fight most bosses and 24 minutes to fight Vexen. It takes forever! True to his scientific nature, Vexen likes to watch you and collect data. Meanwhile, you'll be trying to break through his shield, which has its own health bar, mind you, before breaking through to Vexen's bar, which is enormous. And before
again,
long,
that's
the shield will
Organization 13
reform.
for ya.
Vexen will constantly try to halt your advance by creating giant spires of ice that chase you, giant chunks of frost that gravitate around him, and abilities that let him freeze you solid. And once enough data is collected, he deploys his own anti-form of Sora. So I guess he perfected that replica research he's been working on. Now with ice spells, combo-happy anti-Sora, and the obnoxious respawning shield to contend with, fighting Vexen progresses at the speed of molasses in an igloo. I think the clone idea is interesting though, and it would be helpful here if we were trying to relate it to the element. Clean ice is very reflective, so they could be trying to make the connection between ice, the shield, and mirrors, kind of like Haku from Naruto. But I don't think that's what they were going for. Still, it's a neat thought. Ironically, after 20 minutes of tanking, Vexen's actually the first organization member to be eliminated, and it might surprise you to learn that the other nobodies consider him to be the group's worst fighter. Are you kidding me? I mean, I know he's mostly defensive, but those ice spells pack a punch too, and I had some extremely close shaves trying to heal back up before Anti-Sora got to me. The more you look at it,
I think it's because he has to use Anti-Sora to get through. He sits by himself
at lunch, his nose always buried in data. The guy has no friends. And that's not a nobody thing. He clearly wasn't winning any popularity contests in Radiant Garden either. Demix gets more respect than him, and he doesn't do crap. He's back to his human form as of Dream Drop Distance, but I wouldn't be surprised if we never saw him again. Probably for the best.
No! Please don't! I don't want to!
Goodbye. Goodbye. That'd be done. Bye, buddy.
Originally, I wasn't going to use an entry from Pokemon this time around. There are very few ice types that really stand out as one of my favorites, and while there are several Elite Four members and gym leaders who specialize in Arctic monsters, most of them were kind of pushovers in my opinion. Ice might be the worst type to base a team around because while it counters
a lot
few
of
popular
weaknesses.
types, it has far more weaknesses to the common offenses of fire, rock, fighting, and steel, sporting only a resistance to other ice moves. And then there's Kyurem. I'm not really super excited about most legendaries, and Gen 5 was past the point when the roster was just oversaturated with them. But Comic Foil really likes this one, and he won't stop tapping my arm, so I guess I better talk about it. Ugh. What can I say about this misshapen thing here? It looks dead. But then, I guess it kind of is. Let's see. Kyurem is an Ice Dragon type. A cool combination, and along with Reshiram the Fire Dragon and Zekrom the Electric Dragon, you get the Tau trio introduced in Pokemon Black and White.
Fire, electric.
Okay, I get it. Taoist.
Yeah, just like the Tri-Tech.
One is white and one is black, so I guess mixing the two, you get gray? Like Kyurem?
Probably.
Nah, let's go back to the symbol. Yin and Yang are meant to be the opposites, to show the balance of energies in all things, light and darkness, good with evil,
Truth and ideals.
The dots on the opposing colors are meant to represent the little bit of darkness in all light, and vice versa. Oh, so that's why Reshiram is the mascot of black and Zekrom is the mascot of white. I'm with you so far. Philosophically, Reshiram and Zekrom are meant to represent truth versus ideals. Is it better to be a realist and accept the reality of a situation, or to be an optimist and push the accepted boundaries to make a better world? These dragons are opposites in almost every way, but they're both a form of progress and their types are both expressions of energy. Power is energy and so is heat. The real opposite to the yin and yang in this sense is Wu Yi, meaning emptiness, stagnation, Kyurem.
There you go.
The lore states that these three were once one dragon, but when humanity sought to use its near-infinite power, conflict tore Reshiram and Zekrom apart. Kyurem was left behind, the husk of a former creature, and fell to earth like a comet, gathering ice and landing on what is now the giant chasm, waiting for its pieces to be returned. That's why Kyurem is an ice type. There's not really any such thing as cold, it's just the absence of heat. By extension, the absence of energy. Well, damn. The Pokédex talks about Kyurem containing a freezing energy that, when it leaked out, caused it to freeze over. But we just said that there's no cold energy. Well, not in proven science, but in metaphysics, this means that Kyurem works kind of like anti-energy. That
antimatter
actually explains a lot about the Pokemon universe, including how Regice can freaking survive in lava without melting. I mean, that's against every law of thermodynamics, but I guess I get it now. Kyurem's energy is enough to
Pokemon tends to say F you to
chasm
science a
with
lot.
snow when it wakes, and can be harnessed by Colress in the sequel to power a freeze ray capable of engulfing Opelucid City. Its performance in battle, to be honest, is disappointing. Its stats aren't the best, the typing turns out to be kind of troublesome, and there's a mystifying absence of sheer cold in its move pool. But it has a signature Glaciate, which is kind of like Icy Wind on steroids. It's lacking, but that's because Kyurem is just in stasis, since basically it's just the former shell that used to be an Elder Dragon. It can never be the great beast it once was, but thanks to Team Plasma's scientific advances, it can abso-fuse with one of the draconic peers to become either White Kyurem or Black Kyurem, who are tied with the highest base stat total of any ice type, sitting just below Arceus. Now we're talking. Not only does that mean better ice beams, or using Hailstorm to throw blizzards like they're going out of style, Black Kyurem can now access the move Freeze Shock, and White Kyurem can use Ice Burn. I wouldn't recommend either competitively, but let's think about this for a minute. Ice Burn is actually so cold that it can burn opponents, as the name implies, and Freeze Shock can paralyze. It's a little janky now that we're mixing elements, but I was curious so I did some research. Below 0 degrees Kelvin, materials become superconductive, so that explains the lightning. And it's theorized that a system at a negative temperature, when in contact with one of a positive temperature, could actually flow heat towards the hotter object. That's fire!
Right.
Absolute zero thermodynamics for the win! Well, I gotta hand it to you, Comic. That's some pretty neat stuff, but I still think it's a little too abstract to beat the next 7 contestants. But I'll concede the number 8 spot.
I mean, again, Ice Tide's been struggling a lot, so what can you do? But, I mean, give him the legendary type of Kyurem, who could fuse, which you rarely see. I mean, sure, you can do that with Necrozma and, Alola, but you don't see it a lot. I mean, nowadays you could probably see that because we got infinite fusion now. I'm not kidding, there's a game there. Anywho, moving along, number 7. See who's next.
Welcome to the Freljord, the frigid north of Runeterra. Long ago, the country stood as one against the greatest of evils, the Ice Witch. But centuries later, it stands divided into several tribes. 3 great descendants of the ancient royals stood to stake claim over the land. Ashe the Frost Archer, Sejuani the Winter's Claw, and Lysandra the Ice Dervish. Ashe has done her best to unite the Freljord under one banner. She married the barbarian king Tryndamere, appealed to the Cryophoenix Anivia, restored relations with the Yetis, and even her distant cousin Lysandra bent her knee and rallied the people behind Ashe. But with the year sign foretelling the return of the Ice Witch, Sejuani refuses to recognize Ashe, thinking that a ruler who would bow to other countries and lecture on peace would never have the strength to defeat the witch. Here's the real problem though. The witch never really left. When the League of Legends had their massive expansion on the Freljord lore, it came with some startling revelations. Finally, the 3rd Freljordian princess would be a playable champion, but Lysandra was not quite what we expected. Foreseeing her defeat centuries ago, the witch transformed her appearance and went into hiding, eventually murdering and taking the place of a woman in the royal family. For generations she laid in wait, continually stepping in the shoes of each of her would-be successors. Lysandra, the Ice Witch, is actually the very witch the Freljord rallies to defeat. With the fear of her return stretching all the way to Demacia, not only does Lysandra have her Legion of Iceborn and the Troll King under her thumb, she's hidden among Ashe's ranks, manipulating her to war against Sejuani while corrupting the Frost Guard that was meant to ensure her demise. So as you can see, there were a ton of League of Legends champions I could have picked. But there is no evil in all the realm more imposing than the Ice Witch, at least so far as the lore goes. Her power in-game is nothing to sneeze at either. Well, you might sneeze at it, because it's cold, and that tends to make people sick.
You know what I mean.
Lysandra floats almost motionless on her way to the mid lane, surrounded by glowing mounds of black ice. Like most mages, she excels at mid-range, firing shards of ice that shatter on impact to hit additional targets. But for a mage, she especially likes getting in close. Her Ring of Frost roots enemies around her to the ground, allowing her to dish out more Frozen Fury. This also activates her passive Iceborn. It lets her cast one of her spells for free every 18 seconds or so, and every time she inflicts a crowd controlling effect on an opponent, the cooldown reduces by 1 second. This makes Rylai's Crystal Scepter a great item for her, adding a slow to all of her spells and making Iceborn prompt more often. So just stay away from her, right? Easier said than done. With Glacial Path, Lysandra sends a grasping hand of black crystal straight through opponents. Not only is this damaging, but by dismissing the spell, Lysandra can disappear into mist and rematerialize from the icy claws. Still think you can get away?
Yep, basically.
Lysandra's ultimate spell is Frozen Tomb, encasing a pitiful target to give her and her cohorts time to finish off the last of their health. Or defensively, Lysandra can encase herself in the tomb, ignoring all damage while healing herself. This hibernation is usually just the reprieve she needs while allied champions jump to her aid. Whether used on herself or her enemy, the tomb radiates a cold that damages all Lysandra deems unfit to be in her presence. Maybe I'm being a mite dramatic, she's certainly not the best AP caster in the league, but there's something just chilling about this champion. Winter is coming, my friends.
And when the war is over, the world, our world, will be reborn in ice.
Jeez. Number 6. Moving on from the Ice Witch now.
Blaze Blue.
Ooh.
Frankly, I've been afraid to open this can of
Kazagan?
worms. And it's not because I don't like the game, quite the contrary. It's a flashy, highly strategic, and frantically energized fighting game. But the story is an impregnable wall for casual fans. There's all this complicatedly named characters with weapons equally hard to pronounce, and then there's this all-powerful kitty cat running around. The wiki could scarcely help me. But I'm going to bite the bullet and do some research, because Jin Kisaragi deserves to be here. Jin grew up orphaned with his brother Ragna and sister Saya, and harbored some serious codependency and abandonment issues. Like, serious issues.
Kinda did it, so.
As in burning down a church, killing their caretaker, and attempting to murder Saya so that Ragna would pay more attention to him. It was at this point Jin learned of the Black Beast, a world-ending Orochi demon that now resided in his brother Ragna, Jin decided to leave his siblings, but vowed to someday kill Ragna and the Black Beast in one fell swoop. He began his illustrious career as an agent in the Novus Orbis Libranium, and came to master his sword, the Mukro Algesco Eukinesia? Did you see what I mean about these names? I don't speak Jap-Latin. The Eukinesia is where most of the credit goes here. It was forged as one of the 10 Nox Victoris. Okay, come on with these. Specifically designed to fight the Black Beast. It's awesome enough at surface value as a katana with Sephiroth-like length, but reading the backstory only makes it cooler. The weapon itself is really only a sheath and hilt, but absorbs a substance called Seether, which is the energy of the Black Beast that still lingers in the air all over the world. Running on Seether, it instantly freezes the water molecules in the air to form a blade, bonding them to make an ice with strength and consistency of steel. Jin can use this freezing katana to conjure and fire ice blades, make ice fires to bounce his opponents back towards him, and encase others in ice. You may not see a ton of ice effects in his standard attacks, but the wiki explains that Eukinesia is so cold that it actually erodes all life it touches. Mere contact with this blade is instant frostbite. The FMVs are the best place to witness this icy force, and also the best place to see just how unhinged Jin gets. He's your standard cold loner, but one look at Ragna and Jin goes into a sadistic frenzy.
Yep.
Jeez, someone get this guy a hot beverage.
Right, I'll make tea.
Oh, sweetie, it's okay, I don't want tea.
I'm sorry, it's not optional.
Sorry, not optional.
Eukinesia doesn't help Jin's fragile psyche. In fact, it has a mind of its own and tries to impose its will over Jin. Though the sword was needed to power up Jin at first, Jin's power has grown since, to the point where the sword is now afraid of Jin's potential and putting a cap on his power. Jin's own unique power has started to seep through, such as his Moonsong ability where he shoots a freezing arrow without the sword's help at all. And if Jin just gives up his dependence on Eukinesia, it's possible that he might become the most powerful force in the series. Who can say? The wheel of fate is turning.
Rebel 1, action!
There you go!
Back off!
Yeah, careful.
In the middle of the list, we have another reoccurring Esper of Final Fantasy, the
Shiva.
Ice Maiden Shiva. That leaves us at the end of Weapons Month 4 with 6 entries from League of Legends, 6 from Kingdom Hearts, 5 from Pokemon, and 5 from Final Fantasy. Ugh, guys, I swear I'm not doing this on purpose. It's just what I know and how integral the elements are to these franchises. And for those of you wondering, yes, Celsius was considered for this list, and she is pretty awesome, but she didn't quite make the cut. Sorry, Tales fans, I know you kind of got the shaft this time around, but we'll always have martial artists. Shiva borrows her name and skin tone from the Shiva of Hindi folklore, and that's really where the inspiration ends. This was not the most devoted representation, right down to the gender being wrong.
War goddess, right?
But since her appearance in Final Fantasy III, this Hyperborean heiress has been a fan favorite. She started out as a lower level summon, but her popularity got her an appreciable power buff in Final Fantasy IX, and she's one of the few Espers to appear in Final Fantasy X where she really shows off her versatility if you choose to upgrade her. With Blizzaga in her back pocket, her claim to fame is Diamond Dust, where she not only freezes over an entire enemy party, but with a snap of her fingers, shatters the Arctic scape into trillions of tiny shards that shave through everyone in a razor-sharp mist. She's had many incarnations, the oddest of which is the Shiva sisters Styria and Nyx, Snow's Eidolon in Final Fantasy XIII. Yes, they can scissor their legs to become a motorcycle that freezes the landscape around it. It's ridiculous, and probably riddled with chauvinistic overtones. But watch them fight this Psychom battalion and tell me that they aren't awesome. Once again, however, the coup de grace is a realm reborn. Here, Shiva is a departed hero now known as a saint to some people. To end the Dragon Song War, the heretic Lady Iceheart summons the spirit of Shiva into her own body to become an awesome knightly version of the Ice Esper we all know and love. Fighting Shiva on Extreme isn't as unforgiving as Leviathan or as brutally precise as Titan, but she'll still make you sweat despite the dropping temperature. Shiva changes to different weapon stances, mostly between a sword and staff, which changes the pattern of her wintry attacks. She can drop icicle impacts, which require the party to find small safe zones, and has enough frontal cone attacks that you never want her facing the party. However, her hailstorms and avalanches target specific players, so bunching everyone up behind her isn't always an option. She can also use the global absolute zero and whiteout, requiring your supports to brace with shields and react with quick heals. As things heat up, Shiva conjures icy golems that must be dealt with quickly. The time limit isn't as precise or nonsensical as Demyx's water clones, but if any golems remain after 60 seconds or so, She can grind them up to fuel her Diamond Dust attack, wiping the entire party instantly. In the late phase of the battle, the walls of the amphitheater will freeze anyone who touches them. Shiva compounds this hazard by occasionally slicking the floor, introducing ice physics. All in all, it's a blood-pumping fight that stands up with the MMO's best.
See that often.
I kept Shiva a little low on this list due to her inconsistency throughout the series. Leviathan and Titan are regular Goliaths of the Esper world, but while Final Fantasy XIV Shiva requires an army of 8 to take her down for good, Final Fantasy III's Shiva is a level 2 summon that lasts a few seconds. Still, the good outweighs the bad. The girl's in the rough sometimes, but she's a diamond nonetheless.
Diamond's your girl's best friend. Yeah, be said. Number 4, coming up.
Rundus.
Oof.
I know I just talked about him as one of my favorite tragic boss battles, but I'd be remiss to exclude him as a Cryomancer. Let's try not to tread old ground though, and instead mention some things I may have missed the last time I talked about him. I finally realized the significance of his home world, the ice moon Phrygia, besides it sounding like the word frigid. As always, it comes back to Greek mythology. Phrygia was a kingdom in what is now Turkey, and was ruled by a series of hero kings, including Midas, the man who turned everything he touched into gold. There's also believed to be a lost play by Aeschylus called the Phrygians, said to follow the plight of Hector, a Trojan warrior. I think the idea is that Rundus' corruption is analogous to Hector's death and defilement at the hands of Achilles, and Samus defeating him is symbolic of when Hector's soul was finally put to proper rest. If that's saying what I think it's saying, Rundus' Phazon corruption was a fate worse than death, and Samus was releasing him from his endothermic hell.
Oof.
Deep. Battle-wise, this bounty hunter, when next to space legend Samus, is incredible at taking out pirate forces. He can freeze a pirate carrier solid in one shot, and can turn the ice at his feet into a kind of anti-gravity surfboard, like Iceman or Frozone, but without leaving those pesky ramps in his wake. He was strong enough before Dark Samus' attack, but since then, he's been outfitted with a PED to regulate the Phazon radiation now emanating through his body, which only serves to make him more powerful, though perhaps less controlled. Samus fights him on Brio, at which point it's not really clear how much of his mind is still left. Now, let's be honest, if you stay quick on your feet and abuse the hyper mode, this fight is over in a matter of minutes. But play it fair and you get a pretty exhilarating duel. He raises mounds of ice to give him cover or to get to higher ground, flies on his slipstream while sending ice bolts at you, shoots freezing cold waves that freeze you in place, and can generate ice armor that's completely impervious to Samus' power beam. And just before that, he took out an entire squad of pirates with these homing cold fronts. Did I mention that he does all of this in the molten region of Brio? Samus even gets one of his weapons, the Ice Missile, which can freeze lava! That shouldn't even be possible! It does create this really beautiful contrast of blue and orange though. Lastly, I want to address something that some of you guys pointed out in the comments on the tragic boss countdown. I said that after the fight, he overloads his power, causing him to skewer himself in a fit of poor control. However, some of you guys had another take, that fighting Samus briefly returned him to his senses, and that this is an act of suicide to keep himself from harming his comrade any further. I gotta say, I think that's just as good, if not better than what I initially thought. But while looking it over, I came up with a third theory. The scene is brief and kind of choppy, but see how he kind of looks around for a second before extending his arm towards Samus. Maybe Rundus was regaining his senses, and suffering from his injuries, he was calling out to Samus for help. Then Dark Samus, wanting to prevent this alliance, took control of Rundus' Phazon and caused the impaling. Whichever way you look at it, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, no kidding.
Rest in peace, my friend.
Yeah, I gotta feel bad for some of these people. Jin was just driven insane by Yuki Turumi. Fuck him. Now this guy's just got corrupted by Phazon, and he could have been a great ally in the fight. Poor dude. That's gotta suck. Anyway, so we're down to the final 3. Let's wrap this list up. Let's go.
I can wax philosophical and pull out science or symbolism on the earlier parts of this list, but by the time I hit the top 3, I'm usually just going on what I see. The character's so worthy that it's immediately apparent. In this case, I was left with 3 Cryomancers so great that choosing a definitive greatest is practically impossible. Rundus has range on his side, and Shiva has crowd control and magical power, but these last 3 are just in your face, fast as an avalanche, and twice as brutal. The order of these ranks is pretty much up in the air, but hey, it's a top 10. So the frozen bronze medal goes to my favorite queen of fighters, Kula Diamond. First premiering in King of Fighters 2000, Kula was bred and raised by the Nests cartel with one specific purpose: to eliminate K, a clone of Kyo Kusanagi that defected from the Syndicate. K has fire powers, so Nests gave Kula the ability to generate algid temperatures. Nests is kind of bad at their job though. Sure, they raised an incredibly capable agent, but it wasn't long before she actually befriended K and left the group herself. And while Kula's personality has warmed up greatly in later installments, her powers have not. I love watching her fight. It's just so graceful with all those frigid spin kicks. With the power to freeze the ground solid, she can easily slip up unsuspecting fighters. She'll even do this as she runs, forming ice skates under her feet that are actually made of ice. Not only does this let her ignore the ice physics, it also adds blades to her kicks in a display that an Olympic judge would have to appreciate. It's so beautiful, and at the same time, kinda makes me sad. It reminds me of some countries where talented young gymnasts or skaters will be taken away from their families and forced to commit themselves fully to winning for their nation. Kula's kinda the same, but instead of just a flawless skater, she was a soulless assassin. I'm glad she got herself out of there when she did, while apparently developing an outrageous obsession with ice cream. Her fluid movements are enhanced with other cunning abilities. Her ice breath especially is quick, long-ranged, and great at starting up a combo. She can encase herself in a protective sheet of spiked ice, fire snowflake projectiles by kicking, drop the air in her hands to sub-zero temperatures in order to absorb projectiles, shield herself with ice, encase her opponent in a frozen block, conjure snowmen to fall on people, and probably the most creative of all, freeze her hair and use her follicles as spikes.
Damn.
She's got just the right mixture of poke and rushdown, which is my favorite kind of fighter. Best of all is her Neo-Freeze execution, a huge gale of Arctic wrath complete with Aurora Borealis. It's as devastating as it is gorgeous, the perfect way to finish a big combo. The only reason that she's not any higher is that I just don't have as much hands-on experience playing her.
Fair enough.
Sorry, Kula, it's not you, it's me. And it's these next two. Getting ever closer to the peak, we meet Glacius from Killer Instinct. In a league of cyborgs, ninjas, and skeletons that are also pirates, an alien encounter is to be expected. But Glacius combines our fear of the unknown void with a dead coldness known only in the vacuum of space.
Yeah,
he has no
the
allies,
Pyro Monster
only
this
enemies,
whether it's the
conglomerate
Pyromancers,
Ultratech or the rebels like Jago and Orchid. He stands alone in his conquest. His true intent? The guy was just trying to go home. He crash-landed on Earth and was quickly scooped up by Ultratech for their own villainous purposes, and when he eventually escaped, he found that the company was using his alien technology to gain even more power, forcing him to double back and try to set things right. He may not be the most congenial mound of slush, but he's really not all that bad. The best way to fight him is to get in close, but it's easy to get spooked when he starts manipulating his own body composition. His body is entirely solidus, constantly melting, reshaping, and freezing to suit his preference. He is able to dissolve into a puddle of gelid water and immediately rise up with an uppercut, or he can form his limbs into solid spears to punish anyone rushing in. He was the undisputed top-tier character in the original Killer Instinct, and has only gotten more awesome since. Oh, and I don't count Killer Instinct 2, that's actually not the same Glacius, just another alien come to rescue the first. What makes him stand out more is his ranged abilities, able to cryokinetically rupture the frost from any distance. If you don't stand your ground with him, he will kill you. He may not be as good competitively as he was in Killer Instinct 1. In fact, he's near the bottom of the tier list now, only beating out Aghanos. Whoops. But hey, as I've said before, tier lists aren't everything. You're talking to a guy who runs Zelda and Smash Brothers tournaments. The problem here is that pro players know not to be scared and when to anticipate his counterpoke, and Glacius depends on a level of isolation. He's a hard counter to characters like Saberwolf, and he's the only guy I know who can get an ultra combo without even touching you. It's the most violent rendition of Stomp you've ever seen. He's scary, he's strong, and he's got complete mastery over his element. He was so close to the top. But with nothing else to go on, I finally had to favor seniority.
You know what that means. Ultra combo! And number one is?
I mean it when I say that this was the single hardest weapons list I've ever had to rank. So many great characters got left out in the cold, but you
No
already
pun
know that there's
intended.
someone very important missing.
There we go. No kidding. I mean, if it ain't him, you're just lying to yourself. Mortal Kombat!
Way back in 2012, I called Sub-Zero the 5th greatest ninja of all time, and today I award him the greatest of glacial grandmasters. Everything I said still stands, but since that was 3 years ago, which I think makes it 16 in YouTube years, I'll start with a fresh slate. When I say Sub-Zero, I'm of course talking about Kuai Liang, the younger brother of the original Sub-Zero, Bi-Han. The two were born in America, raised in China, but are partially descended from Cryomancers, a race from Outrealm with the power to control, you guessed it, ice.
Ice.
The boys were taken in / kidnapped by a ninja order
Lin
called the
Kuei.
Lin Kuei, and mastered a fighting style that mixes Shotokan and Dragon-style Kung Fu. But their unique freezing abilities made them especially great assets. Kuai Liang took the title Tundra, while Bi-Han was chosen to compete in Shang Tsung's first Mortal Kombat tournament as the enigmatic Sub-Zero. That didn't go so well. Big brother Bi-Han was killed in battle by the fiery ninja Scorpion, and Tundra
After
stepped up
revenge.
for revenge, taking his brother's name out of respect. Though more hot-headed at first, Kuai Liang soon surpasses his brother as both a martial artist and as a cryomancer, and has appeared in every game in the series since. So what's he do? Well, throw everything about the last 9 entries in a blender, hit puree, and you have the tasty gelato skill set of the Lin Kuei ninja. He can freeze ice into any shape for any purpose, firing ice balls, using ground freeze, or chilling enemies completely solid to get a nice juicy uppercut in. Though he's used a Lin Kuei relic called the Ice Scepter before, Sub-Zero's powers have soon surpassed that weak magic, and his new signature weapon became the fearsome Kori Blade. It's sharp, heavy, and Sub-Zero's never really without it. Why? Because he makes the thing instantaneously out of water molecules whenever the mood strikes him. He can never lose it. To that end, he also sometimes creates a giant warhammer, specifically to mock Shao Kahn, or an array of hooked knives. Or he can
Again,
carve
ninja.
sculptures of himself. By creating ice clones, Sub-Zero can
Yeah,
quickly escape
don't
a
hit the
sticky
clones, you'll
situation,
freeze.
and the statues even freeze enemies like they're coated in liquid nitrogen. And in his Unbreakable set, he can form barriers to cover himself with a frozen aura, allowing him to resist flinching for a scary amount of time. And at one point, while battling the DC Universe, he could use the Tombstone Teleport to melt and reform behind people at will. A strange technique, but one necessary if you're going to stand up to Superman and the Green Lantern. In 1993, Sub-Zero began a lifelong quest to leave no spine unbroken, and his disdain
ripped.
for intact vertebrae is the stuff of legends. Sub-Zero's powers have only increased over time. Raiden took a shine to the boy and invited him to join Liu Kang and the other defenders of Earthrealm, and though he doesn't hang around for tea, he can always be counted on to answer when the circumstances become dire, even while he's dealing with his
Hey,
own
he's the
troubles.
master.
You see, Sub-Zero's ongoing feud with Scorpion only escalated the Lin Kuei's growing fear of the war. The clan prompted for an initiative to turn their best warriors into, oh god help
Cyborgs.
me, cyborgs. Sub-Zero obviously refused the unnatural practice and was forced to flee from the tribe when they tried to force his conversion. He was labeled a traitor of his people and hunted down by Sector, Cyrax, and even his best friend Smoke. But Sub-Zero is not one to admit disadvantage. He managed to appeal to Smoke's human half and rehabilitate him, reprogram Cyrax to attack Shao Kahn, and beat the bolts off a Sector, reclaiming the Lin Kuei and becoming their leader. It doesn't matter who's after him, he's the master of the Yojimbo Gambit. His rise in the ranks also came with a rise in power. Reclaiming the Dragon Amulet, his cryokinesis abilities increased, though with a physical toll on him, and increased yet again when he learned the origin of the Cryomancers and started wearing their armor. Now we're reaching Shiva levels of cold, where Raiden even commented that Sub-Zero may be the most powerful mortal in all the realms.
Hey,
And don't say he cheated
say
just
something.
because he has the amulet. That takes work. Once his apprentice, the fellow part cryo named Frost, stole the amulet, but her lack of control caused her apparent death. Sub-Zero has
yeah,
no
she's
such
still alive.
weakness. He keeps utter control of his power. He went on to find his older brother, who was resurrected as Noob Saibot, and with now sacred power over ice, managed to purify his soul by freezing out the badness. And he finally killed Scorpion in the Battle of Armageddon before succumbing to a cheap backstab from Baraka. Don't feel bad, Liang. Everyone died in that fight. Everyone, that is, except Raiden, who pulled the ultimate nope and reset time, forcing Liang to start from Sub-Zero square one. Oops. Well, it's mostly the same from here, by the end anyway. He still took his brother's place as Sub-Zero and still helped defeat Shao Kahn, Only this time he was captured by the Lin Kuei and turned into a cyborg. Aw, man. Well, he retained all of his powers plus a metal body, and with some help from Jax, his slavery protocol was rewritten, giving him freedom of choice once again. And then, one death by Sindel, resurrection by Quan Chi, and rescue by Raiden later, and he was as good as new. Only better. In just a few short years, he's already surpassed the power that he had in the other timeline, without the Dragon Amulet or the Cryomancer armor, and he can freeze opponents faster, make any shape like horrible beds of nails, he can pull out your entrails, freeze them, and use them as a maul, all in one swift maneuver. And then there was that one time, while still a cyborg, that he defeated Kano, Goro, and Kintaro simultaneously to free their prisoners, and still had enough juice left over to send Ermac packing. He got additional training from Liu Kang's master Bo Rai Cho, and even as he gets older, he still has the wit to keep twerps like Cassie Cage in their place. He has fought every major villain in the series, displaying the power and fortitude needed to defeat them one by one, but still has the human compassion to finally put his war with Scorpion to rest 23 years and 2 timelines later. If you don't think there's a character here, frankly, I don't think you're looking very hard. The way I see it, he's the only real choice there can be. And so, as we finally bring Weapons Month 4 to a close, here's what I took away about each master. Pyromancers are the creatures of passion, turning flash into substance and blind destruction in their favor. Aeromancers are rare but creative, do their own thing, take advantage of an opponent's surprise to knock them on their feet. Aquamancers are the adapters, the graceful ones, the ones ready for any occasion until they find the state where they can claim victory. Geomancers, stone walls, taking it slow at first, but building up the momentum, certain to outlast their offenders. Electromancers harness power in its definitive form, unlocking it in new exciting ways and utilizing its potential with speed and ferocity. And Cryomancers are the planners, the analyzers, not ones to shirk contact with others entirely, but able to remove themselves and examine the situation, build the perfect defense, and shatter the one flaw that they know their enemy has. Is this always true? No.
Not really.
And that's what makes it wonderful. Every time I make one of these months, I learn something new about the tropes, the symbols, the styles, stories, and characters that I love. And I hope you learned something new too. Or at least saw something from a new angle. I'm the Green Scorpion, and thank you for joining me for Weapons Month 4. Until next time, take care.
Yeah, come on. When it came to Sub-Zero, you know he was going to be the top of the Cryomancers. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. Until next time, like, subscribe for more. See ya!